homeless guy who hangs out by the beach.
Or like the guy who's like nowadays lives in a boat he bought in the 60s. Oh, did you lose a bet with Mel, Bob? Did you lose a bet?
No, I broke mine on accident, and I really like the cup, and this is Mel's, and she doesn't use it. But I should have they were like $4 a piece when everything went on sale. I should have bought 6 of them. Best cup ever.
Yeah, our video is like really choppy right now in Be Live.
So is yours, Totem.
Yeah, I know. Like all of us are lagging.
Boom, 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 boom. It's okay. I like being blurry.
Do you?
I do.
I mean,
makes me look better looking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know.
The blurrier you get, it's kind of like drunk goggles. You know, like blurrier you get, the hotter Bob gets.
The blurrier you get, the more you start to be like, Bob's right.
All right. I don't know if it's gonna. No, it's still being choppy.
Still, it's cleaned up on Ramsey's and Ednar's side.
Yeah, mine's still.
Bob's is cleared up.
What is going on?
Are you gonna do your drunk tweets, but just about Endgame when you're in the theater?
Not in the theater. Well, I'm seeing Endgame at 11 a.m.
Okay.
So
the child showing. I get you.
All right, looks like it's clearing up. That was kind of weird. It's like just delayed initially. But anyways. Sorry about that, guys. Just Be Alive feeds happening. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to OWL By the Numbers, your one-stop spot for all things fantasy Overwatch League. I am your host, Emily Drunk, at tonight on episode 12. We are back to discuss a week full of Overwatch League debuts. We'll have our look at the first comparison between Note and RCK on their new teams as they both re-debuted after the trade between the Dallas Fuel and the Boston Uprising. And we'll, of course, get you primed for your week in unlimited drafts and so much more. Before we can jump into the agenda for tonight and introduce you to my co-host, who is scrolling right now. Because that kind of comes through. But anyways, before we can jump into the episode for tonight and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight on Twitch for our live show, and thank all of our repeat listeners. We've got a full house tonight with all hosts on hand, so let me welcome Blaze and Bob back to the show, as well as Ednar and Ramses. It's been another wild week of Overwatch League action. We've got a new event in Storm Rising that started today in-game. Really a lot to discuss tonight, and before we can do that, though, how has this past week in fantasy been treating you? And Bob, since you weren't here this past week, let's go ahead and start with you.
It's been treating me poorly. This last week in fantasy, I made a grave mistake. I hope you guys don't make this. Take it from me. Set your lineup early. Don't think that you have 20 minutes to set it prior to game time, because I went to go change and went to go set my lineup, and I couldn't connect to the site. And honestly, the site should have been up, but it's still kind of my fault for not setting it early. So word to the wise, don't delay on setting your lineup. There's less chance to forget too.
Yeah, definitely. Usually I know I've been doing it Wednesdays, whenever I can get a hold of Julian, whenever that may be. But Julian, how's your past week been? I know you might have picked up a pretty important win.
Picked up, stumbled into, same thing for me. If you may recall, Ed and I had our double or nothing bet last week. From last week, that Ed had to beat me in both times he played. In both our Foul Play Experts League and our Overwatch League Network League. Overwatch League Network, Ed, I think you beat me by 5 points at the end of the day.
4 points.
And in the Foul Play Experts League, because of some technicality, apparently, I won. Because somebody started Kodak as their team captain.
Hey, I couldn't change my captain before the matches started.
Yeah, he suffered the same issue that I suffered.
You win in protest, but you will still get your skin.
A win is a win.
Yeah, a win is a win. I'll give that to you. I mean, you have as many wins against me as the Houston Outlaws have.
That was harsh,
In
dude.
general?
That was harsh.
Had to get
I'm
that
already
out.
hurting
You're going to get a lot of Outlaw hate tonight. So
I'm already hurting, Ed. You had to make it worse.
yeah, I would hurt too if I was starting Arhan.
I mean, we are.
At least for this past week. But Ed, how's your fantasy week been outside of the blunder that happened in that second series?
I mean, it's
Oh god! All right, guys, you could just like turn off the podcast or just fast forward for about 10 minutes.
No, all right.
Go ahead, Ed.
So my fantasy week went fine. I went 1-1 against Ramses, which it happens. I had to lose in foul plays at some point. I couldn't go undefeated the entire season.
The dragon has been slain.
I'm still in first place.
Okay, so you lose, and then Fusion University also lose after winning 30 straight games.
I
Coincidence?
basically am Edinar, aka Fusion University. Like, you can just call me that. That's fine.
I'm pretty sure I'm the only one here that has a Fusion University jersey.
Minor details.
I have a Fusion one. Does that count?
But no, it was a great week. Me and Bob lost our matchup this week against Deathblow in the Podcasters League. It was a close match, so it wasn't anything dramatic. I beat Ramses, like we said, by like 4 points. I lost to him in the other league. I did really good in pick'ems this week. I actually caught up. I gained 2 points on Ramses, who's actually doing pretty good. So I think me and him are both like top 5 in all our pick'em leagues.
Nice.
Unlimited was fine. I didn't do outstanding, but I didn't lose ground. So I consider that essentially a win. But also, I had Tiger Woods on my fantasy golf team. Booyakasha! So my fantasy golf team killed it this week because I not only had Tiger Woods, I had Adam Scott, who was in the top 10, and Ricky Fowler, who was in the top 10. So, I was sitting pretty there.
I can already hear us losing people here.
And
I didn't even know Tiger Woods still played.
Yeah. Neither did all his ex-girlfriends.
hey, Ed, quick
Boom.
question. How many fantasy points is the Presidential Medal of Freedom worth? Because I know he's getting that at some point.
He's getting that, but let's be real here. Ellen DeGeneres has a Presidential Medal of Freedom. So does Babe Ruth. Who's the quarterback from the Cowboys?
Tony
Not
Romo?
Aikman. No, like the old guy from the 70s.
Oh, Roger
60s.
Staubach, yeah.
Yeah, he has one.
Dad's favorite player.
Bear Bryant has one. De Niro has one. So,
And
all right.
back to Overwatch, fans.
There we go. Of all people, Bob gets us back on track.
I am a host on another show.
But no, it was a great fantasy week. Totem, though, you have set some sort of personal record this week.
What?
How was your fantasy week?
I mean, if you call back-to-back wins after losing the first 5 matches in the foul play league, then sure, I am not in last place though, and that's all that matters. And I'll leave it at that.
Speaking of that, what is your guys' favorite fantasy setup been so far this season? Sorry to just throw that out there, but I was thinking about this while listening to last week's episode. Is it unlimited? Is it standard raw or standard? What's been your favorite so far?
I'll go first. Regular standard, not raw.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's standard raw takes more like tinkering as it may be, but you have to play. You don't get to play your favorite players.
Yeah, you get with raw, you get rewarded for really working the waiver wire rather than having stars.
Exactly. It's the same thing happens in baseball where you're doing 2 start pitchers over 1 start studs. Like this past week is a perfect example of this. Bedosian had a 200-point match. We don't get 200-point matches this stage, really. Like they're very few compared to last stage. Custa beat him in 2 maps, and as a main support, or 2 matches, as a main support, he beat 200 points in Bidoshin. So if you're a Bidoshin fan, you're not starting him because you'd rather start Custa because he's playing 2 matches. Like, that's the only thing, the only downfall of Raw. I would like to play like the people that I want to get behind and cheer for, rather than, okay, you just happen to be playing 2 matches this week, I'm going to cheer for you type of thing. So I'll let the other.
Oh, what about you, Totem?
Well, see, here's the thing. All of my records are so varying between the 3 match types.
But which do you enjoy the most?
I prefer unlimited between the 3. I'm not a huge fan of Raw, just because, there's a lot of situations where you can't really get like the ideal sort of team comp for your rosters. In most situations, unlimited, it's interesting. Like, I was looking back at some of my past rosters, and I'm not always keeping the same core each week. There has been a lot of flexibility, which is not something that I would have expected, just due to the fact that there are certain teams that have been performing stronger than others in fantasy. But, if I was going to rank them in order, I would go, unlimited, regular, and then the raw scoring last.
What about you, Julian?
I think I would go similar way that Ed's going. I probably would go with not raw, best game scoring. Simply because you do get to play your favorite players, and it's a little bit more forgiving. I have been enjoying Raw a lot more than I thought I would, though.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I know I was really worried about getting wrecked in Raw just because I missed certain player pickups, and even though I haven't been doing as well in that league, it's still been really fun. But standard scoring best game is probably my favorite.
I think I'm in the same boat. I think standard's my favorite. I think I would like raw scoring a lot more in unlimited, because then I could just choose anyone I want every week. I really enjoyed Raw to start out with, like the Foul Play Experts League. But I was putting a lot of time into picking up the right players. And honestly, with all the different leagues that I'm in, if that was the only league that I was in, I'd really enjoy it. But it's gotten to the point to where I'm like, well, I don't want to do this every week. It was, it was a good half an hour. But if it was, unlimited, then you could just put whoever you want in that's playing 2 games, and you'd always feel good about your plays. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I think I'm on the standard boat too. So Totem was the one that liked unlimited the most, huh?
Yeah, well, speaking of the waiver wire, this week's kind of been interesting. We had a lot of people making their debuts in the Overwatch League. But Bob, to start things off, was there any players in particular that you were looking to acquire from this week's waiver wire?
This week, if I Am 37 was still in, I would have went with him. Crystal, maybe. Crystal, good one. Those would be my 2.
I have the biggest homer suggestion, and I'm going to get roasted for this, but there's merit to it. No, I see Ed right there. So,
Cool Matt's coming back. Cool Matt's coming back.
Oh, no, Cool Matt's my sleeper this week. But when Homestead Weekend is week 4, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So, week 4, when we're going to be relying on a bunch of teams playing twice, if Arhan's still the starting Brig player for the Outlaws, I think Arhan's worth a look. Arhan, Cool Matt as well.
He's worth a look for week 4 only.
Yes.
And if you have the roster spot to have somebody to only play for 1 week, 2 weeks from now, when the majority of people in the league won't even be able to fill out a roster, that's a lot of people are talking about week 4, but you also have to take into account, no matter what, not everyone is going to have a full roster in week 4. It's actually impossible. You would be starting, backups to backups on the teams that are playing. So is Arhan worth it? Maybe. But he startable outside of that week.
Oh, I wouldn't say so at all.
But but like you have to take into account how you're doing in the league and who you have on your team already. Whereas you might just say, screw it. Like if you're high enough up in the league and it's not going to be detrimental to you, you just kind of say, I'm not going to build my team around. I'm not going to try and get as many people as I can. I'm going to just say I'm going to keep the roster that I have, let the other people, drop people from their roster to try and get that win. So the people in the bottom half of the league try and like go all in to get that
good point.
To get that win. Whereas like someone like, for instance, in Foul Play, me and you, Randy's, we're towards the top. We're better off not dropping somebody who we like on our team just to get that one extra person for week 4 when week 4 is a complete crapshoot. It's just 100% a complete crapshoot. And we might be better off. Whereas like Totem, who is 2-5 now, he's better off going all in for week 4 to get that win and move up a little in the rankings.
Well, I'd also base that on who's actually on my opponent's roster.
Exactly. But you won't know that until Tuesday week of, because who knows what's going to happen. But yeah, there were a lot of good pickups this week. I mean, Fitz? Did anybody go out there and pick up Fitz?
I have not. The DPS player that I actually picked up was KSF from the LA Valiant, since he's been seeing a bulk of the playtime here as of late.
Yeah, KSF is a great pickup this week. And I mean, like I picked up in our Foul Play League, I was actually kind of shocked by this. I was able to pick up Birdring. So if you can pick up Birdring, go pick him up. He's 100% back in their lineup, and he was a top 4 regular standard scoring player this week. So he's available in the majority of leagues coming into this. I was able to pick up Dogman because some people dropped Dogman after 2 weeks ago when he didn't really play at all. So you have Dogman out there. There might still be Gray might still be out there.
Gray's not playing this week, though.
He's not playing this week, but the thing is if you're smart about it, you have a roster spot that he can fill, and Gray is actually a very good starter in the flex support role when flex support players are not often available. So Gray is available. I 100% think you should go and pick him up. FRD is another one that might still be out there. Baby Bay might. As much as I hate Baby Bay, he's not actually the best player, but he puts up decent fantasy numbers.
Puts up a lot of points.
He is the epitome of Blake flipping Bortles. Like Baby Bay equals Blake Bortles.
He has unbelievable mechanics, which transfers to points. Like the problem with him in the broad sense is game sense, which oftentimes doesn't matter for fantasy.
Yeah, it's he's putting up the numbers. It's why if you look at the stats from this week, the Valiant players are all over the top of the leaderboards, but the team sucks. But they can put up numbers. The Guangzhou Charge have put up decent numbers. Like you're not getting it's weird, and you really should guess it. But the best teams put up crap fantasy numbers.
Yep, which is
New York.
Oftentimes happens, for NFL teams that have really good defenses. Like their offenses oftentimes don't put up much, but you get a high-powered offense with a horrible defense, and all of a sudden you got some fantasy monsters.
So, yeah, those are some of the pickups that I would go after. As far as matchups, if you can go out and get anyone from the Dallas Fuel right now, pick them up. Like, I have bashed the Fuel, but they play 2 good matches this week. They play, obviously, in the Dallas homestand next week. Like, you're going to get some good matches because this week they play the Vancouver Titans and the Seoul Dynasty, which should be good matches and not blowouts. So you're going to get fantasy production So I think I said this last week. If Zachary is still out there for you, go get Zachary. Closure is an obvious option because he is main support, but he's going to put up numbers. And OGE has put up some pretty decent numbers as well. AKM actually has gone down a little fantasy point wise. Like his skill has gone up. Like you're seeing him flex more and you're seeing Note flex more, but you're losing a lot of the points from AKM because they're just the Zarya. Zarya is not as prevalent as it was in stage 1.
If he's going to be on the Sombra, he's not going to be doing damage constantly like he would be Zarya.
Yeah, it's why people aren't seeing like Suman Su is not like dominating everything again, because sometimes he doesn't even play and sometimes he's not even on Zarya. So like the only one that's really strictly on Zarya like 80-90% of the time now is Sinatra. And it's fine for me because I have him in like every league.
All right, well, taking a look at this past week, we also did see a number of players making their debuts. So we had Flower debuting for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Excelsior in a 4-map series, and he put up, roughly 100 points there. We had Crystal, who played 3 of the 5 maps in the Hanzhou Spark win, and Crystal put up 92.61 points. Arhan played in all 4 maps for the Houston Outlaws, and he posted 67.48. And really, for all of Houston, it was a pretty rough week, pretty much across the board. We had Reaper from the LA Gladiators, who played a garbage map in a series that was already won, who put up 38.41 points. We also had Yun Xiaolon of the Chengdu Hunters debuting. He played 2 maps and put up 41.28 points. And then, of course, we had RCK and Note debuting under their new teams. And, looking at this, Bob, these 2 players were very close fantasy-wise. And really, the results for both of these teams were absolutely outstanding as both teams picked up some wins. So we had RCK, who did come out ahead, putting up 142.36 points, with Note trailing. Not by too much. It was only like 4 points. He sat at 138.26 points for single. And then collectively, he put up 249.72 points altogether. So all in all, we had a lot of back and forth this past week. And I know last week you were a little disgruntled, especially after, or the prior week, doing back-to-back shows.
I was disgruntled, though, because I thought Note was a one-trick. I thought Note was a better diva overall, and I thought he'd make OG better, but I didn't have any clue he could flex like he did this last week.
Right, and I know you and I were talking a little bit on Twitter, too. It's just the fact that we haven't had to see that from him, but it's nice that, right out of the gate, you actually got to see it from Note as a Dallas Fuel fan. So, we got to see him playing a different couple of roles. We saw, some double main tank compositions from Dallas Fuel this past week for Note.
Love that.
On the Orisa with OGE on the Winston. We got to see him play, a pretty decent amount of Zarya as well as Diva. And, the points definitely speak for themselves. I'm definitely happy to see that both teams really came out ahead. And, unfortunately for Boston, Spark, they just had a hell of a series there. And Crystal was kind of like their undoing, essentially, since Crystal won every map that he played. But this is definitely something that we're going to be keeping an eye on as the season progresses to see who's going to come out ahead on their new teams, respectively, between those 2, just because their stats across the board have been pretty even. And I want to see if that's also going to reflect in the long term in Fantasy Overwatch League as well. But Ramses, speaking of player performances in this past week, Houston, they had a pretty rough go of it across the board. We also saw some players that have been putting up pretty consistent numbers on a very notable team and a team that a lot of people are still underselling as well. So why don't we take a look at how, some of these notable players did in this past week?
All right. So first up, Choi Yo-bin. We're seeing, Ed and I have talked about this a couple times, that a lot of these teams that the more powerhouse top 3 teams tend to be very feast or famine with fantasy points, unless your name is Sinatra, where teams that are just crushing people generally don't turn back a lot of fantasy points. I know with how well San Francisco's been playing, 92.03 from Shoyobin isn't great, and you would hope that they step that up more. But this is a team that's really hitting its stride competitively, and I'm not sure necessarily if we're going to see point increases go back. I also don't think you can necessarily drop him though, just because of the sheer point potential that San Francisco as a team has, let alone him. I don't know. For me personally, I don't think Shoyobin's a slouch yet. I think he's a trade, but I don't necessarily think I would go full slouch on him. What about you, Ed? What are your thoughts?
I mean, on Shoyobin and really all of the San Francisco Shock in general, it's one of those. They're not scoring fantasy points because their team is so good, and this was the latest example of it. You didn't see it so much from the Vancouver Titans this week because they played 2 matches, and you saw the inflated numbers. Whereas with the Shock, you only had 1 match to go off of. So they just got steamrolled, and there was nothing they could do. I don't think anyone from the Shock is droppable by any means. But you really have to start taking into account some of these, and this is going to sound bad for me to say, and you guys need to not yell at me, but honestly, I'm almost at the point where unless New York Excelsior are playing 2 matchups in a week, you don't start any single one of them. And that sounds weird, but they have such an easy schedule that they're just going to steamroll their way through. And they're not going to score the points. So you really almost have to take into account the matchups more than the actual player.
Definitely.
Like I said, with Costa outscoring Badoshin this week. Who would have thought that? It's stuff like that. You have to take into that account all of that. And you saw that with Shoyobin. You saw that with Violet. You saw that with basically every San Francisco Shock player this week. And the reverse is also true. I mean, we're going to talk about 2 people from, a certain team in Dallas whose coach doesn't know how to keep their mouth shut.
Well,
and
it's more their general manager.
Sorry, their general manager doesn't know how to keep their mouth shut. But you can see from their scores, they were on the opposite end of getting steamrolled, and their players in fantasy-wise were useless. Like, just beyond useless. So you really have to take into the gut, and Shoyobin really kind of stressed that this week.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's slouch yet, but it's harder and harder to justify the roster spot every single week when you could be somebody who's going to get you a little bit more points. Next up, of course, we have Luffy, the flex support from the Shanghai Dragons. This is somebody who was kind of a breakout fantasy star from this team, especially in Stage 1 in the GOATS meta. Now going into Stage 2, when we're seeing a lot of the flex support scores kind of even out as we see a lot more Ana play. We're this week in 1 game, unless I'm incorrect, 1 game only scored 92.68 points and didn't even break 100. I want to know, Totem, voucher slouch, Luffy.
I mean, it was definitely a bad week. I know I started him in one of my leagues. Fortunately, it wasn't enough to kind of deter me from picking up the win there. I'll say across the board, though, it's really more of an effect of the meta that we're seeing, where the Zenyatta play hasn't always been at the forefront, just due to the fact that we are seeing a lot of Ana coming into the rotation. We're seeing a lot of different things with the support lines, where we're seeing Baptiste enter the fold. And, Baptiste, for a lot of these flex support players, hasn't been a great asset either for fantasy, unless you're a DPS player. I mean, Rascal is a prime example of that. He's probably been the most potent Baptiste that we have seen, not only in the league, but also for fantasy Overwatch League. So if you're an owner of Luffy, I would just say, well, you look at this team. Shanghai have, still to this day, like a lot of people are overlooking Shanghai, and they've been picking up more and more wins, and I still feel like you can't sell them as of yet. So I still keep him on the roster, but I don't know. I wouldn't say he's like a tier 1 choice. He definitely probably fall in, probably the lower end of tier 2, I would say.
Yeah, and just checking here, they play Florida Mayhem and Houston Outlaws this week, which both are going to be decent scoring matchups for my money. I think he's a start this week, but again, he's maybe a team captain or or support too. I don't think you should be relying on him unless you absolutely have to. Bob, next up, I'm trying to figure out which one of these I don't want to have Ed talk about.
Why don't you just bundle them? Because they're both in the same team.
I probably should.
I'm going to talk about them regardless if you call on me or not.
So, Bob, like we already talked about, Houston Outlaws players, super low scores this last week. The two in question we're talking about here, Dante was 69.92 points in one game, and Raucus was 63.45 points in one game. Both not great scores. Granted, you're getting rolled by Vancouver. Going forward, what do you think? Vouch or slouch for either of those players?
Well, I mean, they had a pretty rough game, but I mean, next up they've got the Fusion, who can either be bad Philly or good Philly, and then they have the Shanghai Dragons after that, which I, by the way, am overlooking on purpose because they're not that good. They're rated overall 16th in the league, and they are just not that good. They're not as bad as they were last year, but they're still bottom of the barrel. So they have games coming up.
Darlings and the Chengdu Hunters.
True. But the Chengdu Hunters are way more fun to watch, so like they get a pass on that. You know what I mean? But the Houston has some easier games and some good map matchups. They have some good maps this week, maps that they are good at. So I think that you could probably vouch for both Dante and Raucus as coming back with at least 90 to 100 point scores next week.
Yeah. I'm gonna say something that's gonna surprise you. I vouch for Dante. I think he's got good matchups, and he's playing 2 this week against Fusion and Shanghai. I think he's actually quite a good start this week. If you're playing raw scoring, I think he's a good start. Raucus, on the other hand,
You're just a bubble butt hater, aren't you? You're a bubble butt hater.
I actually have a legit reason for not liking Raucus as much right now, is because I see Raucus going more over to the Ana over the Zenyatta. And Ana players do not score fantasy points. They're not putting out the damage, and they're not putting out the heals quite as much. I mean, perfect example is Twilight from the Vancouver Titans. He was, up here in the form of flex supports. He started basically playing like 90% Ana, and then all of a sudden he's down on, and I hate to say this, Hagapet level, like of flex supports. Should I start him? I'll start him if he has 2 starts this week. Otherwise, not so much, because Ana, while it is great for the meta and for the game, fantasy-wise, Ana does not put up the numbers. So that's why I think Raucus is actually a slouch on it, because I see Raucus going more over to the Ana, which I feel he's more comfortable on. And he's definitely
strength.
He's better on Ana than he is on Zen. And if he does that, then his fantasy value will actually drop more because Anas just don't put out the fantasy numbers.
But
what do you think about it? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
I just want to say, maybe if Houston actually played to their strengths, maybe they'd be able to pick up a little bit of momentum. But I do quickly want to note, Bob, before you chime in really quick, it's not just Raucus that has been making the switch. A vast majority of the flex supports in the league have been primarily playing Ana, outside of a couple of exceptions, which would include Ryoji Han, who has still been playing a majority of his play time on Zenyatta still.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, keep your eye on Anna's though, because the meta is shifting and bunker comps are getting more and more prevalent. And if Anna plays with a Baptiste and they have a Bastion, and their whole goal is to use Baptiste's ultimate to overheal the Bastion during big attacks, that could be a good bump in fantasy points. It's not happened yet, but only a few teams have messed with it.
It could be, but like the more other support that you're seeing in these bunker comps outside of Baptiste is you're seeing Mercy, because you're seeing more Far Mercy, because and this is very prevalent on like King's Row, is you'll have the Orisa, Baptiste, Bastion, and then you'll have Far Mercy.
Would you play a Mercy over an Anna? Like, I wouldn't, because most of the time it would be
if you're running a Pharah,
and they're just damage bursting. Like, they're most of the time they're damage bursting, unless the Pharah's bad and getting a lot of shots on them. If they're not positioning correctly, then most of the time Mercy's just damage boosting, and you get no points for that.
Yeah, no, you don't get any point. But I'm saying, like, what they're running now, you're more likely to see Far Mercies out there than Anna Pharahs out there, just because it's what people are playing, especially on King's Row. You did see some changes to that. I forgot who had the greatest anti-grenade of all time. What was it that they chucked it over the building and timed it perfectly with the dive? But Anna could be good in some comps. It's just a lot of those comps, they're running Pharah. And the default for a lot of these teams when they're running a Pharah is to automatically run a Mercy.
So you're saying that the Ana becomes the Mercy?
Yes.
But lots of times, though, we've seen the off support play the Ana.
Yeah, and that is definitely true. You could have the main support go Mercy, and then you're seeing the flex support doing...
The main support is actually usually going, like the Mercy players from last year, the majority of them are going Lucio.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's I talked about this last week on Heroes Never Dies. We can make all these speculations, but there is no meta right now. Because so many things change. Like, you look at San Francisco Shock, who's playing Baptiste? One of their DPS players. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, like, that's just not... Who played Sombra for the Dallas Fuel this week? I saw Zachary, too. AKM, and Note all playing Sombra this week for the Dallas Fuel. Like,
Fusion's had EQO on Baptiste and my favorite, Boombox.
So, yeah, like, there is no meta right now. Like, Goats is favored, I think, overall, but there is no meta right now because so many people are running so many different things. Your meta is based on maps. So, yeah, I would just say be careful of Annas until you start seeing them pump out fantasy numbers, but they haven't as of yet.
Right. Yeah, but like when we look at the meta, a lot of it is very map dependent too, and that's why we do see bunker compositions used in certain situations, other than 3-3, which is still pretty prominent. But I will say we have seen a lot of the character choices kind of shifting week to week depending on what maps are being played. So this past week we saw a little bit less bunker compared to just a traditional 3-3. And that's going to continue to kind of happen as we move along. So definitely keep an eye on what maps are being played before you make the choice of, what characters you think an individual player is going to be playing in those situations. But, as we've mentioned, it's been very up and down with fantasy values overall this stage once all of these balance changes hit in the Overwatch League since Baptiste was introduced. So, Ed, let's go ahead and nominate our players of the week for this past week. So is there any player in particular that really stood out above the rest for you?
All right, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to call on each one of you to name one offense, one support, one tank that you nominate. Just like we did before, I'm going to go first. And I'm going to go with one team. 3 people from one team. I'm taking Bedosian, I'm taking Birdring, and I'm taking Fury. Those 3, I mean, I could put Prophet in there, but I put Birdring in there because it's nice to see him back. So Bedosian, they only played 1 map total. He had 207 points. The only player this week to score over 200 points. Birdring, 188 points. Only 1 game. He was the number 2 DPS player this week from an individual map perspective. And that is because he was behind the other DPS player for the
Prophet.
London Spitfire. Like the number 1 tank in the league this week, I don't know. Oh yeah, that's Fury. Fury was the number 1 tank. He dropped 150 points on as a tank. So like when you think of it, they had the number 1 support, number 1 and number 2 DPS, and the number 1 tank on their team. I'm just gonna say the Spitfire win it all. Like, they were the best fantasy-wise, and none of this was in a 5-map series. Like, that's the other thing you have to take. Like, I ripped on Boston because, yeah, they were the top scorers, but they played 10 maps. This was on 4 maps. It was a 2-1 series, a very good series, and that's how, you just don't know that these series can come out. But, I mean, that's why the Hanzo Spark did so well. So, I don't know. Ramses, who were your top players this week?
I'm going a similar method that you did, but I'm going to go based more off of combined scoring, if anything, since that's what I end up having to put the most work into, personally.
It was the only one you could win?
Technicalities, dude. I'll take it. I actually was going to base my lineup for top 3 off of the Philadelphia Fusion with Boombox. Oh, sorry, Bob. Boombox.
Skip me.
Boombox, EQO, and then Poco. Boombox, I think, according to the stats, being the number 1 combined stat person, player, point getter. The number 1 point earner this week for combined with 344.25. EQO being the number 1 offense player for combined again for 297.72. Actually, I was surprised about this because I've never been huge into Poco's consistency as far as a point earner. I've always been favoring a little bit more hot and cold players. But it's been nice to see just how consistent Poco has been in production over the past couple weeks. And Poco being the number 1 tank with a combined score of 253.78 and with a best of 130.66. So a really good production from Philadelphia. I was pleasantly surprised.
All right.
What Ramsey said for me.
Really, like, there's an obvious one for you, Bob.
Well,
I could
go with Dallas, and I could, but
nope.
Philly was the one.
Who's the one person who left Dallas last week?
Oh yeah, dude.
Upset about
RCK is a bad man. I've been saying it since the start of the season, and boy, if he got points for eating ults, woo,
he'd still be behind Fury.
Yeah, Fury would still be top.
So, all right, well, you're gonna go with Ramses. Totem, what about you? Who would be your top performers from this week?
I have to say, like, Bebe really caught me off guard this week, putting up 172.78 points for the Spark on main support. You're usually not used to seeing a main support actually being up that high. We normally don't see any sort of total. That was weird. Like, my High Noon reloaded for no apparent reason.
Exactly, that just did mine. I'm like, did they just pick something?
Yeah, I was freaking out because I'm like, I hope that wasn't my entire browser. Outside of that, I have to say, like, Decay has been very consistent DPS wise, and he's really coming to his own. And I'm gonna give an honorable mention for a completely non-fantasy Overwatch League related reason to Surefour for creating this illusion that the LA Valiant were gonna somehow win that series against the Gladiators by running a Reaper and just throwing a map. And they just basically gifted, the LA Valiant at least, one map basically for a map differential since they ended up drawing. So that was a thing.
Reaper is the worst player.
Okay,
he
just loves like Surefour loves to play like something that throws people off. Like what in week 1.
Reaper doesn't throw people off though.
Well, like he played Symmetra. He was the first one to like actually make it work on King's Row, and so I think his thought process is he just wants to make it work, and then be like, dude, I did the less optimal thing and still beat you, bro. Like I really feel like that's his mentality when picking these weird picks.
Okay, the only thing about that, Bob, is the fact that in the current meta, with how many shields are in the game, Symmetra isn't necessarily the worst pick to make. Whereas Reaper, even when they got to the point and forced the fight to them, they still lost all of those fights.
He ulted and didn't get killed.
Well, let me rebuttal that then. He's just working his way up the ranks, He's like Super Saiyan 1 Symmetra, then Super Saiyan 2. He's not quite got it, but he's going to keep working on it.
Okay, I actually have a question for you guys regarding Surefour.
Sure.
Droppable?
I would never drop Surefour.
Yeah,
he's just such a big brain. Like they're going to keep bringing him back in,
but he's from a
really talented.
They would have to get rid of Decay, but they're not going to get rid of Decay because.
But they've been just playing 3 DPS.
But he's still not getting any form of fantasy points.
Yeah.
Like let me.
Yeah, you make a good point.
Get to it. I think he had 50 points this week. And they played 2 matches.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't
just to let you know.
Sorry, you have 30 points.
Bird Ring was completely droppable this time, stage 1.
Yeah, Surefour was completely droppable in stage 1 too, because Decay was playing. Like at this point,
when Decay came in, what was it? Week 4 of stage 1 or something like that.
2 or 3.
I don't think so.
It was early on because Decay was probably 18 within the first week.
Yeah, Decay came in and was a starter from day 1. Surefour right now is a bit role player on that team. And from a fantasy perspective, he is 100% droppable because you're just getting 0 value from him because he's in that unfortunate situation where he's amazing, but the person above him is way better. And Decay is way better. Right. So I don't know. What about you, Julian? You didn't chime in. What do you think about Surefour? Is he droppable?
I think he's definitely tradable. And I think if you absolutely.
If you can trade Surefour at this point,
I guarantee
you are your god.
Well,
Surefour is just pop. Like most people don't think, like you do, Ed. Like most people. You were talking about it earlier. People want to play their favorite players. Like that's a really good point, Ramses. If you can find someone who's a Surefour lover, you can make some bank on that.
Yeah, but people want to play their favorite players who actually play, and Surefour is just not doing that.
I think you could the vast majority of fantasy players a little too much credit.
Well, this is also true. Like, if you can get a trade, like that's one thing that HighNoon.gg said they're working on is the trade. The trade situation on the website is iffy because you don't know if you ever get a trade.
Right. There's no notification.
No notifications, nothing like that. But once that's fixed, you can start offering up Surefour left and right. But you have limited roster space right now.
There needs to be a trade block is what they need to have so that you can put someone up that everybody sees, hey, so-and-so is on the block. Do you want to offer anything?
Yeah.
Like, that's what they need.
One thing I will tell people, and this is just from gut feeling, if you can trade for anyone right now, barring one of the superstars of the league, trade for Zachary. Just do it now. He was 6 in fantasy points this week for offense.
AKA Bob was right. And Totem, too. Totem and I were some of the few podcasters.
Here's the thing.
that
Would
talked about
Zachary be on the same level as he is right now if Effect was still on the team?
Yeah, it just depends on what the meta is. Like,
exactly.
Effect is an amazing tracer, but he
feel
always
less
played
confident
with
about
Envy
Zachary.
on his own. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He was never a super team player, and that's why I don't think he's survived these different meta shifts, because he was basically working alone while the rest of the team did something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the difference, too, is with the fact he was high risk, high reward, whereas with Zachary, it's more a consistent performance. And just, well, for one, you know he's basically going to be starting because, well, for starters, he's kind of in brick jail with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. You just feel more confident with Zachary now, with no Effect in the background,
Right?
And that's why, you know, when as soon as Effect announced his retirement, I'm just like, go for them. It's like getting that starting running back in football who has no handcuff. You're just like, well, he's not going to split any carries. He automatically gains value that way. That is what I feel happened with Zachary and AKM. It's like, well, they have zero chance of getting taken out of the starting spots because they're going to put in Taimu, like, who hasn't played DPS since probably stage 2, season 1.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Taimu, but
so
they're probably just waiting for him to pop off his scrims. They're like, all right, Taimu's on for the next three weeks. Go.
On Winston.
He is so streaky.
Oh yeah, he's Corey, just older.
I don't know. Like when he's popping off on hit scan, like I mean, he's one of the best hit scan in the league, especially on McCree. Like, when he's not, then he looks like
he should be on
dog
the
bleep. Yeah,
he looks like an outlaw starter.
He can join Linkser on the bench and only come in for one map, and then he'll pop off, and then they won't play him the rest of the series.
Exactly, because Arhan was so good, so good.
Well, to be honest, Linkser's Brigida wasn't that good either when he was playing that role. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the marquee matches really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and set the table, and I'm going to throw it to one of you to make the prediction for some of these matches. So let's start with the Thursday match between the New York Excelsior and the Philadelphia Fusion. This is a match that is going to kick off this week. So looking at the grander scheme of things, you have NYXL, who are up overall, throughout Overwatch League history, 5-2 against Philadelphia Fusion. Philadelphia has shown to be a little bit more confident in its current meta since they have been able to run more Winston 3-3 variations. But NYXL in the 3-3 meta are still really probably the second best outside of Vancouver Titans. So when you look at Philadelphia, they have that certain X factor where they're able to beat any team and also able to lose to any team. And it's really hard to equate which Philadelphia is going to show up. Is it going to be the Fusion? Will it be the Confusion? I don't know which way it's going to go, but one particular spot on this team has kind of been their Achilles heel, and that is when EQO has been on the Brigida. As soon as EQO goes down on that role, it seems that everything kind of falls apart at the seams. And with NYXL facing a tougher opponent, they are less likely to make any sort of substitutions in their lineup. So you can see a healthy dose of Libero as opposed to Flower in this series. So, Bob, who do you think is going to come out ahead of this one?
Well, I mean, the smart man would say New York. Like, the smart man would definitely say that. But you have to think, I'm pretty sure... Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure that Philadelphia was the only team to beat NYXL twice in season 1. Once in, stage 1, and then once in the grand finals playoffs. And so I feel like maybe NYXL has just there's some sort of weird rivalry there where in football, you can the Kansas City Chiefs could be one of the best teams in the league, and the Broncos could be one of the worst teams. Sorry, the Donkeys, excuse me, could be one of the worst teams in the league. But the Donkeys are still going to put up a fight against the Chiefs because they're in that same division. So I feel like this is that same thing. So I think if anyone's going to beat them early, I think if good Philly shows up, they definitely have a chance. But the smart man's money is definitely on New York Excelsior.
Yeah, and, it's also regular season, too. And, NMXL seems to have that buffer in the regular season, which is a complete switch around when it comes to playoff time since, Philadelphia doesn't choke. At least right out of the gate anyways. But looking at Friday, we have a very interesting series between maybe two of the underperforming teams in the league. A lot of people would probably say, as these teams are near the very bottom of the standings. So we have the LA Valiant going up against the Washington Justice. So this is the first meeting between these two teams, and we've seen the LA Valiant slowly starting to progress, with KSF taking over the Zarya role and, also being on DPS for this team. Kareev has been primarily out. KSF has been in. We've seen the sudden emergence of Corey on Washington Justice being one of the more exciting hit scan players in the league, whether he's on Widowmaker or flexing over to Soldier 76. But outside of that, there aren't really any bright spots on the Washington Justice lineup as of late outside of Corey. So it's really feast or famine. And for Washington, it hasn't, been the best. And, the Valiant picked up their first win. They've made some coaching changes lately. And, maybe this is an opportunity for them to build a little bit more confidence, knowing that they are going up against, probably an opponent that a lot of people are going to see as, lesser as opposed to, a vast majority of the league. So Ramsey's taking a look at this series. Are the Wings going to be out, or are they going to get clipped?
I think the Wings are out just simply because per individual skill position, I think the Valiant are easily the better team. I don't know if synchronicity-wise or team mentality-wise if that's the case yet. I think that having a win under their belt definitely is going to help push them in that direction. It also helps that the only person who is more willing to throw away a shatter than Fate is Janus. So
Janus the Feeder.
Or Giannis, as he is apparently now called.
You're forgetting about a certain B to the U to the M to the per.
Oh, and guys, we definitely have to rename Arc. He's no longer Arc the Undying. He's Arc the Dying to Diva Bomb. After this last week, dude died first so many times, and he was the only one to die to the Diva Bomb so many times.
He is this season's Bonnie.
I thought about you, Toto.
With gloves.
I saw him on the death sheet.
At least he's not this season's deck.
I mean, I hope not. Either way, though, I'm going LA Valiant. I think it'll be 3-2 LA Valiant, and it should be closer than it ever should have any right to be, but I think it's going to be LA Valiant.
All right, so next up we have what is going to be one of two very tough matches for the Dallas Fuel this week, as Dallas Fuel go up against the Seoul Dynasty on Saturday. So Dallas Fuel recently played Dynasty in Stage 1, and they took that series 3-1, but in the overall series, they do trail 4-1 to the Seoul Dynasty. So, as of late, Dallas Fuel, they made the trade, get in note from Boston Uprising, and they shipped out RCK over to Boston. We have really the reemergence of OGE, who has really been turning a lot of heads on the Winston as of late, showing a lot of great mechanical skill, especially with the Primal Rage usage. And for the Dynasty, there's still a lot of question marks on this roller coaster. Like, where is Fleta? Who's going to be starting? What squad are they going to be running? Are we going to see Fisher? Or are they going to go with Marvel right out of the gate? Because it seems like week to week, there's always something else going on, and Dynasty can't really nail any particular go-to sort of strategy. So, Ed, looking at Dynasty, you're probably not the best person to ask in this particular one, but you have a team
wears the Dynasty jersey.
Dynasty are currently floating in the middle of the pack. And, while they're doing all this experimenting, you have Dallas Fuel, who has picked up a ton of momentum. Do you feel like that momentum that the Fuel have been gaining over these last few weeks is going to result in a win for Dallas?
Oh, 100%. I think Dallas is going to actually win 3-1 on this one. I think the Seoul Dynasty suffer from what I call the Atlanta Reign syndrome, where they don't actually know what lineup they want to run, and they don't know really how to deal with anything. With the Atlanta Reign, you have the Fried and Lair and Kodak or Dogman, everything. You have the same thing with Seoul Dynasty, just with better quality players. I think overall. So you have Marvel over Fissure. You have Fitz, who performed very well, starting over Fleta. Like, they could go both ways. It's just they're trying to just test the waters and see what works best for them. And the way the Dallas Fuel are playing right now, I think the Dallas Fuel are going to take advantage of that and really kind of dominate it. So I'm thinking Dallas. I'm not even going to go 3-2. My heart really said go 3-2, but I think it's going to be a 3-1 in favor of the Dallas Fuel. And I have no idea what the hell Julian's doing at this point.
I know, dude.
His phone's about to die, so he had to get it plugged in.
Okay.
Bring your webcam, guys. Bring your webcam, ladies and gentlemen.
I think the Dallas Fuel are going to win, and I think just Note is going to dominate this. He's going to just go to town.
With Dallas and Boston, if they can just split their week and come out 1-1 with the schedules that they have, that's only going to be a win in their books, because neither one have an easy way out in stage 2, week number 3.
Totem.
Yes.
Do you think that Dallas is probably putting most of their scrim time and planning and preparation into Seoul, or into the Toronto? Damn it!
He'll get there.
Vancouver Titans. Do you think they're putting more effort into the Vancouver Titans or Seoul Dynasty? Because I think if they're putting more effort into Vancouver Titans, they could go 0-2 this week because of it. But if they're putting more into Seoul, I think they definitely go 1-1. But what do you think?
Here's the thing about that, Bob. I'm of two minds. Because one, if you say, okay, we're going to prep for Vancouver, well, at least you have a better idea of what Vancouver is going to be throwing your way. Now, the problem with that is, well, you know that that's just going to be 3-3. And as every team has basically proven outside of San Francisco Shock, you do not want to run mere 3-3 compositions against Vancouver Titans, because chances are that is going to result in a loss. Now, on the flip side, if you say, okay, well, let's go ahead and try to prepare for the Seoul Dynasty, well, in recent weeks, you don't know what they've been running, so you're either going to prepare to see Fissure be very aggressive on the front line, or you're going to have Marvel kind of in that role, and then you'll see Fitz, who has kind of been the key component when they are running that alternate squad. And, that's the thing. I feel like it's going to be a risk either way, because in one situation, like let's say they plan to prep harder for Vancouver. So they're going to be optimizing their 3-3 composition, trying to shore up any weaknesses. Chances are that's not going to result in taking maps off of Vancouver, but that might actually show some success against the Seoul Dynasty. But, if you prep for the Dynasty, I feel like out of the two matches, that is going to be the more winnable one. It's just a matter of who's going to be on the Zarya role. I don't think you have to worry about Fleta starting again. They seem pretty prominent of just having him be in the Daco corner, like with Atlanta. But watch, as I say that, he'll probably pop up this week, wherever he is. But I would say prep for the Dynasty, prep for them to run the Fitz lineup with Marvel starting. But, you have to have that done in your back of their minds. Fissure is probably, if they are going to play him, they might just try to come in with the B squad, map 1, try to throw Dallas off, and then they'll go from there.
Yeah,
But
I mean, Marvel's been playing on the control the majority of the time. I think though, if you want to beat Vancouver, from what we've seen, they struggle against DPS comps. I mean, Chengdu beat them with a DPS comp. I mean, I guess it was all Koth, but Houston beat them with a DPS comp. They seem to like really struggle against the heavy DPS. They do amazing against the Goats v Goats, but yeah. But everything you said, I agree. I agree with completely.
yeah, the only thing about that too, Bob, is like this was a major discussion point this past week with creating your own style versus trying to quote play the meta. At the end of the day, we have seen teams basically coming out and trying to run their own style, and Chengdu is a great example of that. The problem is, while yes, they have taken maps off of some of the best teams in the league, it hasn't resulted in wins against the best teams in the league. Then again, neither has run into 3-3 in the mirror match, so it's just like you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Definitely.
And at the end of the day, though, Dynasty have looked like a shakier team, and I don't think that if you just say, okay, we're just going to run DPS, and then on these payload maps, we're just going to run 3-3, because DPS heavy comps aren't that great at the payload maps, then you're just setting yourself up for failure in that situation.
Maybe on the payload maps, you just try to run bunker on all of them instead of trying to match the 3-3. I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but I'm getting off topic. My bad.
Mm-hmm. So last but not least, we do have the Sunday match that I want to talk about, which is the Atlanta Reign versus the Guangzhou Charge. Now, I'm going to preface this saying that, for one, the Guangzhou Charge may have already broken the longest map losing streak in Overwatch League history, because right now they have lost 23 maps straight, and their first match this week is against the Hangzhou Spark. So if Crystal comes in map 1, like he did last week, chances are Spark will take that. They'll tie the Dragons record of the last season. So who knows what Charge is going to show up to this, but Atlanta has kind of been in a free fall ever since the Fran has retired. So we've seen Baby Bay come in, who honestly has been fairly shaky running DPS or Zarya, depending on what kind of looks Atlanta is throwing their way. The off-tank position has been a revolving door, when we've seen basically 3 different people playing that role currently, neither of which are Dako. And it's really a case of what is going to give first. So Ramses, I'm going to throw this one to you. Who do you think is going to come out ahead? Because both of these teams right now were kind of at the lowest points that they have been at this season.
Both these teams seem really lost to me. I know I've been thinking about this recently with Atlanta, that you hope that they're going to be able to coach out some of the recklessness, that they're going to be able to coach away some of Baby Bay's recklessness, but it's been 2 weeks and it seems like it's still there. And then Guangzhou just really hasn't had any sort of firm handle on what the current meta is. I'm feeling lucky. I think I'm going to go Guangzhou this week. I think I expect maybe Eileen. I think I expect Eileen and Shu to show up pretty big this week. I think it'll be a tight game, because again, you have 2 bottom of the barrel teams just clunking heads until somebody manages to win. But I think Guangzhou is going to take it.
Okay, so as a follow-up, do you feel like at that point they would have tied or broken the Shanghai Dragons map losing streak?
I mean, part of me wants to keep the record just gilded in the plaque in the corner. It's like, this is the magic Shanghai streak. No one can touch this. It's our first notable Overwatch streak. I think they're going to tie it just barely, just because what do we love more than things that almost deliver on people breaking streaks and then falling apart just at the last second? I think they tie it.
I mean, BeLive is being a little laggy again.
Totem, what do you think though? Like, okay, so Fran leaving is the biggest problem with Atlanta, but I don't know that Baby Bay is the issue in this. I think the issue is not playing Dako. What do you think?
I feel like at the time, it's the fact that they're adding in so many new components to this team because they brought in Baby Bay. Mm-hmm. They have had different people starting at the off-tank position, and we still don't know like what's going on behind the scenes with Dako, if there's any sort of reason why he's been benched the past couple of weeks. So I feel like since technically they've kind of like cut their feet out from underneath them and kind of like restructured half of their team, they're still trying to regain their footing, and I feel like it's not necessarily just one person, but it's more of a collective effort from all of the moving pieces on this team.
That's a really good point.
Fried's never seemed like the sole weak point in Atlanta, but I can definitely agree that taking out a third of your team is going to completely change the dynamic and the calling of how that works. So, and Baby Bay is just, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Baby Bay dies a lot first, and he also throws away a lot of grabs, which that's just a team fight or two each map you're losing.
But I mean, so many Zarias have thrown away grabs all through stage one. Dufresne threw grabs away. Half of the time, the average viewer would think it was throwing, but like he was actually really delaying the team. Like I remember one time on Ilios Ruins, he solo grabbed a Lucio and he killed him, which delayed them a lot. Now he died, but he spawned with 50% charge. Right. So I mean, like he was already back to it, and he delayed them even more. So sometimes the thrown away grabs are just them missing that one player they were trying to grab. Hence, watch me whiff, watch me nay. You know what I mean?
Sinatra is the king of solo grabs at this point.
The only difference here is, though, Baby Bay isn't earning his grab as quick as the other examples you guys were given. Now, outside of that, though, I will say we have seen the grab usage kind of altered in the sense that you do see a lot of Zarias just looking to solo grab the other Zarya. That way they can't get their Graviton Surge off in the fight. And that seems to be becoming more and more prominent as the weeks go along. But before we wrap up tonight, let's quickly take a look at some of the players that we are looking to run in our unlimited drafts this week. So, Bob, why don't you kick us off? Who are some of the players that you'll be eyeing to start for your unlimited leagues?
Well, I'm guessing that the Spark are going to be smart and play Crystal again. So I'm going to go with Crystal. I'm going to go with AKM. Those are my two DPS. For healer, I'll go. Wait, does Philly play next week?
They play Houston and New York. New York, yes. Houston in order.
All right. I'll go with Boom as the support. And then I'll also go with Unko as support. For tank, I'll go. Oh, this is hard. I like you skipped over. Like I thought you were skipping over this. So like,
Totem's thorough. He never would.
I'll go with. I'll go with Note and RCK.
That I can agree with, Bob, because that's actually who I put for my tank line this week. Outside of that, though, looking at mine, I put Violet for my captain this week. For supports, I put Aim God and Boombox, with my DPS being the line of Prophet and Decay. So I don't know. I know you and I are usually running similar rosters. Are there any other sort of variations to your lineup that you're running?
Yeah, actually. Well, all right. So I have the exact same support as you. I'm running Aim God Boombox. I'm running Note. I'm actually running 2 New York Excelsior players, just because of the matchup with Fusion. I think it's going to be an actual matchup where they can score points. So I'm going Meko and Note, and my DPS are going to be Carpe and Nene. Just because I think that matchup is going to be pretty darn good. And then I took a flyer in my captain spot because they actually have semi-decent competition. And I'm going Haxel. He's playing the Fuel and the Boston Uprising, both not like top 3-4 teams, but both better than average teams. So they're going to actually get
Dallas is at 6th place overall.
exactly like is 6th place overall, but like they're better than.
It's good to say that. That's all.
Average is 10th place. Like they're better than average, but they're not on the same level as the San Francisco Shock, New York Excelsior, or even the Gladiators at this point. So I think
not yet.
Not okay. So I'm going to go with Haxel as my sleeper for Unlimited this week.
Can Brigida God really be a sleeper, though?
Yes, because Brigida God is going to be playing, and I don't know if you noticed this when watching last week. A lot of the middle tier teams who aren't as awesome at 3-3 are running bunker comps. Like they're the teams that are running. Like you're not seeing New York Excelsior, San Francisco Shock, Vancouver Titans running bunker comps. You're seeing the Dallas Fuels, Seoul Dynasty, Boston Uprisings. You're seeing those teams run bunker comps because
if you can get a Bastion player, get a Bastion player.
Yes, but one of the best counters to a bunker comp can be, wait for it, Genji.
Yeah, but Genji's not going to get any points. Like if they win or lose, if you have a Bastion, it's going to be good points for at least that map.
But Baguette doesn't get points either. But I think Haxel on his Genji could do some damage this week.
I feel like we've had a conversation recently about Brigida players, specifically Haxel, actually scoring points.
We have.
But so Haxel is going to be my sleeper this week. So my starters and all my unlimiteds are Haxel, Carpe, Nene, Aim God, Boombox, Meko, Note. So I'm basically going all in on Fusion versus NYXL at this point.
And if it's a 4-0, you're going to be feeling like an idiot.
Right? I will be. But
let's take this moment to give Totem his just, dues. Brigitte can score fantasy points. I was schooled and I was proven wrong. So
my favorite thing about that, Bob, was when you tweeted initially. You're like, "What is this show?"
I was trying to I was just woken up.
That's
and, it was from the night before, and I was like, "What am I looking at? What does this have to do with anything?" And it was like, it took me a second.
It's all good. Ramses, do you have anything else to add before we close out the show?
Right now, my current lineup, I think I'm doing some switches right now. My current
Raucus, Body, Jake, Rinkster.
Oh, we lost
him. We lost him. I guess
I pushed him out. Oh, the shame. The shame. His phone died.
Womp, womp, womp.
Ramses, he's probably still talking to the mic.
Feels bad, man.
He probably is.
Well, anyway, since Ramses isn't here, I guess I can go ahead and close out the show for tonight. And he'll probably pop in as we finish the broadcast. So, guys, if you want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to go leave us a review over on iTunes or your podcasting app of choice. We're always looking for ways to improve the show to make for a better listening experience for you. If you would like to find additional content, go check out Overwatch Recall, where you can find a listing of several other Overwatch League Path to Pro podcasts over on our website. And of course, every Sunday night we release the Weekly Recall, which is the episodic listens of all of the past week's content. And I know last week there were 30 new episodes released. 30 plus episodes, I should say, because some did release multiple. But 30 different podcasts released new episodes. A lot of good stuff there. So be sure to go to our website, look at the podcast directory, and follow Overwatch Recall on Twitter at OW Recall. But Ed, we have so many different ways where our listeners can get a hold of us. So why don't you let them know how they can contact our show and our network?
All right. Well, there's numerous ways you can do this. You can contact our show through email at contact@owlnshow.com. We are on Twitter at at OWL by the numbers. We do have a website, and that is www.owlnshow.com, where we post all our fun stuff. We do have a YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. We have a Discord, and the Discord is discord.me/OWLN show. So come over there, join us, have a bunch of fun. We talk trash quite often. We are streaming presently live on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show. So we are Twitch affiliates, so help support the show by subscribing to our network channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network does stream pretty regularly. So Overwatch League Network airs Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. This show, OWL by the numbers, airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific. And then the show Totem and myself do on Wednesdays, Heroes Never Die, is at 5 p.m. Pacific. Host streams are kind of up in the air. I know Totem, you have started to stream before Heroes Never Die. Spider has been streaming a little bit on Thursday, maybe a little bit on Friday. So just follow our social media and go on Discord to find out when we are going to be streaming. And then we do have a Patreon. So patreon.com/OWL Network. We recently launched our network's Patreon page. And those that want to support our Overwatch Network even further, they can do so there. Tiers starting at just $1 a month, so anything helps. Come over there and help us out. We do want to do a special shout out to Iceham Jello on becoming our newest Patreon. I want to know the story of your name.
He was in my stream last night. He seems like an avid podcast listener.
Yeah, I just want to know how Iceham Jello becomes someone's name in like the video game world. I know Iceham Jello does actually stream, so if you let me know, Iceham, what you stream, I'll shout it out on the next podcast. So you too can join the likes of Blazing Bob, Brendan, Gabby, Iceham Jello, and help support our network grow. So thanks again for all your support. You can I'll throw it to Totem. Totem, how can they contact the hosts?
He's throwing it back.
I'm throwing it back.
We have Ramses back. Ta-da, he's here.
He looks like he's staring down into the pit that the Outlaws are in.
Yeah, that hole that Flame kept digging himself in. Now, granted, I haven't caught oversight, so I don't know if that hole got even deeper, but that's a discussion for another night. If you would like to reach me, you can do so on Twitter at TumblyDrunkCTR, and as long as Ramses is here, he can go ahead and let you know how you can find him.
All right, you can reach me on Twitter at Ramses_OW, and where you can find me, hopefully making Totem's life a little less miserable with all my technical difficulties I put him through every Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday.
Not likely.
You can also reach him by yelling at the clouds from this perspective.
This is how I look at everybody being 6'4", you know. So you can find me again at Ramses_OW on Twitter, and you can find my other show I do, Push the Point, on Twitter as well. And we record every week. New episodes up on Tuesdays.
Sounds good. Bob, where can our listeners get a hold of you on social media?
Well, just to follow up on Ramses, though, if you want to worry about, I'm 6'3", get yourself a standing desk just like I got here. But you can find me and everything I do on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB.
Perfect.
Perfect. Ed, I honestly forgot if you even plugged yours.
I did not.
Okay, so I'm throwing it back to you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Edanar Overwatch. That's EDANAR Overwatch. And it's that time of the show.
Oh, God.
For the
Where I am the broadcast.
ridiculous MCU questions.
Okay.
So here's the crazy one.
The time of the show is in between, like everybody saying their social media totems.
I'm gonna say,
involve you telling me what skin you're gonna
hijack is what it is. It's
a hijack. Show hijack. All right. So in Black Panther, one of the things that was big in the final battle, spoiler, there were rhinos everywhere. Wakanda had rhinos for some godforsaken reason,
and Cersei can't have elephants.
Yeah. And Cersei can't have elephants. But They had rhinos all over in Wakanda. Where the hell were these rhinos in Infinity War? Like, these rhinos were all over the place. And then in Infinity War, when they could have really used them to just plow through people, no rhinos. What the hell? It's not like they don't make enough money to CGI in some GD rhinos.
They were hibernating.
Rhinos don't hibernate.
In the
They're not.
Okay,
They're
I
not
have
the
the answer to
outlaws.
this one too. So
Okay.
the reason why there weren't a bunch of CGI rhinos, Ed, was because all of the actors didn't want to be running through all of that shit. That's what it is.
But they had to deal with some of the actors and actresses, and most of their performances were shit.
Captain America has issues with rhinos, so they were like, "We'll keep the rhinos back. Keep the rhinos back." I'm just telling you the truth, man. You know,
part of
the rhinos
You asked the
disappeared like
question.
Drax's nipples.
Maybe it's something similar to like elephants and mice, where Ant-Man was afraid of rhinos.
Ant-Man wasn't there. He had yet to crawl up Thanos' butt and then expand. No, have you not heard that theory yet?
That would have been a really good
which
way
has been
to
acknowledged.
take it down.
Ant-Man
Plenty of
Thanos'
times.
butt like a bunch of times.
Yeah, Ant-Man, like the new theory is Ant-Man climbs up Thanos' butt and expands and destroys Thanos from the inside. It's plausible.
It could happen.
I'm going to go ahead and sit down. This might take a long time.
Well, with that being said, guys, I do want to thank you again for hanging out with us tonight on OWL by the Numbers. This has been episode number 12. I've been your host, Emily Drug, joined not entirely all the way through by Ramses, Lace and Bob, and Ed and Art. Guys, have a good night, and we'll see you back tomorrow for Heroes Never Die. Take care.
Peace.
Later.
Adios.